Hello, friends. Gregg Braden here. Welcome to this week's edition of our questions and answers. Wow, do we have a lot of questions? And not surprisingly, the questions are revolving around a common theme of what in the world is happening with the banking system, what's happening with the financial system, because of the news of the bank collapses that have been happening over the last couple of weeks. So I just want to begin. I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not financial advice. I have had to understand these principles for myself and, for friends and family, and I'm happy to share with you what I've come to understand. It's complex. I don't want to dive deeply into the economics, but the questions are revolving around why are the banks failing, number one, and what can we do to obviously to protect our savings for ourselves and for our children. So to understand the reason that the banks are in trouble right now, you've got to go back and understand a little bit about how our banking system works. We work on what is called a fractional reserve banking system, and I'm amazed at how many people are not aware of this. I live, again, a rural community here in northern New Mexico, and I talk to my friends and neighbors when I go to the grocery store, or the Walgreens or whatever, my little co-op for all my organic produce. And many people believe that when you put the money into the bank has all the money that you put into that bank. Well, a fractional reserve system, it's a really interesting way of thinking about banking. In a fractional reserve system, in the past, you put, for example, let's say you put $100 into the bank. The bank was only required to keep $10 of that on deposit. The other $90 of your money, they could invest, they could loan, into other banks. And this is why the banks are so deeply interconnected. And this is why when one of the reasons, when one of the banks begins to have problems, you think, well, it's that bank. Well, other banks are invested in that bank because they've taken our deposits and they have done just that. They've invested into, mortgages and securities, and there's a whole story about how that works. This is where it gets really, really interesting, because during COVID in March of 2020, I want to make sure I get that date right. It was actually March 26th of 2020. The banks made a decision. A lot of people don't know that this decision was made to relieve the requirement that 10% of our money be kept on reserve. The amount on reserve went to zero. So in other words, you put $100 into the bank is not required to keep any of that $100 on reserve. They can loan or invest $100 of that, 100% of that $100 wherever they'd like to go. So that becomes a problem when the shareholders in the bank, or the depositors in the bank, rather, one day, if all the depositors in the bank say, I would like everything that I have given to you to save for me, I would like all my money back. Well, if everyone wants 100% of their money back and the bank is not required to keep any of that money on reserve, that means the bank cannot fulfill those requirements at that time. And this is precisely what began to happen with the banks, Silicon Valley Bank, SVB, something like, I don't even remember, astronomical numbers, because there's a lot of money in Silicon Valley. These are the monies that are for startup companies and for venture capital and things like that. Silicon Valley is a hotbed for investment. So we're talking about, a lot of money. This isn't just like money for college savings and things like that. Because of the conditions of the market, because of the interest rates, because of what is happening geopolitically, a lot of reasons. One day, the investors said, we'd like to have our money back. And there was a run on the deposits at Silicon Valley Bank. The bank could not fulfill those requests, and the bank was insolvent at that point. No bank today can sustain a run at the level that Silicon Valley Bank was hit with. No bank can, because we are now 0% of this fractional reserve system. So this is why you're seeing we have an unhealthy financial system. The system is broken. our country is bankrupt. We're 130, I believe 130 or 135% of GDP in debt. So we owe more than we're producing every year as a nation. And during COVID, we began printing money, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, a little bit more detail. But we began distributing money, flooding money into the system to help people during COVID. The consequence of that is that for every dollar that you put into the system, it dilutes the value of the dollars that are already out there. And I'm going to show you a chart here in just a moment of how much money went into the system. I'll just tell you right now, in the last 2 years, we have put more money into the system in the last 2 years than has been put into the system since the agreements to use the US dollar as a world reserve currency in 1944. So in 2 years, we pumped so much money into that system, it lowered the value. It's devalued the purchasing power of a dollar. You don't need me to tell you that. You're looking at $8 to $10, $12 for a dozen eggs in the grocery store. Even at my neighborhood co-op, we're looking at that. So another way of thinking about that is that actually the eggs didn't change in price. What changed is it takes more dollars because they are weaker. It takes more of those diluted dollars to buy those eggs. So to us, it looks like the price is going up. So maybe that's a minute point, but I'm using it to illustrate what happens when you flood the market with the dollars, called printing of the dollars. And this leads to one of the questions. The question that I have that I wanted to answer, it's from Robin. Robin is asking about what it is that backs some of the places where people are choosing to put their money today. So some people are choosing to put their money into precious metals. Robin is asking specifically about cryptocurrency. And I want to talk to you about that. And I think it's a really, really good question. So to do that, I've got just a couple of slides I put together. Let's go to these slides because I can show you in the charts and graphs, and then I can narrate what it is that we're looking at. And I think it will help to answer a number of these questions. What's happening to the dollar? Why are we having problems in the banks? And what it is that backs our dollars? What is it that backs our cryptocurrency? And from that, hopefully you will have the information that you can make choices for yourself. I'm just going to say, I think we're living in a time of extremes, and extreme volatility is part of that, and extreme volatility in the financial market. We all know that. So I think whatever choices you make at this time, I would not put all your eggs in one basket. We're talking about eggs again. I wouldn't put everything in one basket. I think it's important to spread these things out. I think it's important to have cash. We all need cash to pay our bills, keep our businesses running, make payroll, all those kinds of things. There are places that historically, for 5,000 years, precious metals have held their value. They will never go to zero, like a piece of paper can. A precious metal will never be valued at zero. It will always be valued at something. And the sad thing is, and the frightening thing, is that when those metals appear to do well, it's only because the markets are in such really, really bad shape. And so when you start seeing metals doing well, or some of these other investments, it's because people have lost faith in the traditional banking instruments, in CDs, in savings, in equities in the stock market. And so they're bailing from those, looking for alternative investments. And I am going to make a distinction here. I'm not talking about investments. When I put money, if I choose to put any of my money into precious metals or into crypto, I'm not thinking of that as an investment. I want to be really clear about that, because this is an investment advice, and I don't think of it that way. What I believe I'm doing is I am converting one form of energy into another form of energy that, for whatever reason, in that moment in time, I feel more comfortable with, I have more trust in. So I'm not saying that I don't have trust in the old system. I'm not saying that I trust only the new system. We're living in a time of extremes and volatilities. It makes sense to take into account different probabilities and different eventualities. Crypto can be good. It's only good if you've got access to an internet and we lose power, we lose internet, that crypto is going to do you no good until you have access to the power in the internet again. I know a lot of my friends don't like me to say that, but I want to be honest with you. That's the reality. Precious metals, they're awkward, they're bulky. You have to store them. You don't want to walk around with a pocket full of gold bars. I'm not saying that that's the thing to do. But the question is, why are people choosing to shift from traditional forms of banking and savings into some of the alternatives? And the two primary alternatives right now, where money is leaving the stock market, it's leaving the tech stocks, it's leaving, a lot of the traditional investments, even traditional IRAs, traditional ETFs, for everything, and it is flooding into what have in the past been called alternative markets, primarily precious metals and crypto. But I want to be very clear about this as well. When I say crypto, it's not all crypto. Crypto is a general term. I don't even like to use it. That was the language in the question. I'm going to make a distinction between Bitcoin and other crypto. Most crypto investments, I believe, are really risky right now. And of the 20,000 or so alternative crypto tokens, crypto projects that are out there, the estimates are about 99% of them will fail. Making the distinction because Bitcoin was the first. The others are mimicking what Bitcoin does better than anyone else. Bitcoin is a secure blockchain. It has been up and running uninterrupted for 10 years. No other, it is the most consistent technology. No other technology, no other network can make that claim. Bitcoin has never been hacked. It is the most secure blockchain. It was designed during the 2008-2009 financial crisis for times just like this. It was designed for people to have an alternative. It is transparent. We have no other system with the transparency that Bitcoin has, or no secrets of Bitcoin. It has been up and running. It hasn't failed. It's never been hacked. There are drawbacks, and I want to talk about those drawbacks as well. But I wanted to make this distinction between Bitcoin and some of the other cryptocurrencies that are popular. And I'm not saying don't get into them, in the short term. Maybe it's a good thing in the short term. But ultimately, there is a distinction between cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, which was the first crypto network that was established at the level that we see today. So let's just jump right in this. I'm going to share with you a couple of slides just to give you a sense of what I'm saying, because I think the graphs and the pictures are important for you to see. So we've talked about money in some of the other videos I've done on this channel, and I recognize that not everyone has the opportunity to see every video that I've ever released. I'm grateful when you do, and I don't want to be redundant, but I want to share enough so that we can have this conversation and I can answer this question in a way that's responsible. So let's just begin. What is money? I mentioned the difference between money and currency. Money is, economists tell us that money has three fundamental functions. Number one, it's a medium of exchange for our energy. And I want you to really think about this, because it is this function that links money with deeply spiritual principles in this way. You and I are spiritual beings. I think you all probably agree with that if you're seeing on this channel. We are beings of energy and spirit. And when we expend our energy or spirit in the world, we are compensated for this in ways that are physical. And those physical compensations have properties that we have agreed upon as a society. Now, we don't always think about this stuff. You go up and put a roof on a friend's house or fix their car. You don't necessarily think about expending spiritual energy, but this is the truth of what you're doing. So it is a medium of exchange for your energy, providing something in the world, and I'll talk about what those some things are. And it is a store of value for that energy, because if you are not immediately compensated for the energy you've expended, you want to be compensated in a way that you can use later. So you can store it and cash it in later. And it's got to be, money has to be in a form. Your energy needs to be compensated in a form that other people are going to recognize and honor and respect, a common measure that we've all agreed upon. So let's talk about this. a medium of exchange for energy. What is the energy? You and I, when we go into the world, we provide typically one of three things. We put our energy, our spiritual energy, into our emotional energy, our mental energy, our psychological energy, our physical energy, into producing something that other people need, typically either goods or services. So we work in a facility that maybe it's a factory that makes things that people need, or services. We provide all kinds of intellectual services, educational services, financial services, or information and knowledge. This is what I'm doing right now. I'm sharing information. Hopefully it becomes knowledge, and hopefully it becomes wisdom for all of us, but information and knowledge. So we are compensated. Typically, everything we do will fall into one of these three categories. There are always exceptions, but typically into these three categories. Now, if we are not immediately compensated for what it is that we're sharing, for our goods, services, information, or knowledge, then we are compensated. We want to be compensated in a way that can be stored, and that it can be redeemed at a later time. So redeemed over, whether it's 10 minutes from now or 10 years from now, you want your energy to be compensated to you in a form that is going to be accessible to you, and through a common measure of value. So it's something that's standardized and accepted. So this is the way economists typically see money, and that's why I'm sharing with you what I'm doing now. Now, the money itself has 6 properties that economists say must be present to optimize money. Our money right now doesn't have all of these 6 properties. So let me just describe what they are. They are, number 1, durability, portability, divisibility, limited supply, uniformity. Whoops. Maybe that's 5. Okay, five properties is what we're seeing there. Okay, different economists, have different perspectives. Sometimes they divide one of these into 2. So the durability, the portability, the divisibility, the limited supply, the uniformity. So we've had attempts to create money in the past, and you all know about this. There are some cultures even today that use beads, for example, or they use cowrie shells, or they'll use tokens that are minted or produced in a certain way. We've done all this before. The gold and the silver coins that we find on the on the seafloor, and the wrecks of the Spanish galleons and things like this. There were problems with all of these. They didn't fulfill those 5 functions. We have used gold, and gold has pretty much been a standard. It doesn't fulfill them perfectly, but it fulfills enough of them in a way that it is a go-to resource when it comes to preserving our wealth. Right now, we're using paper money, whether it's the euro or the yuan or the US dollar or whatever it is, as a representative. The idea is that it represents something that has value, that fulfills these principles. And the paper money was kind of like a shortcut. It was an easier way to carry this around. So the question here's one of the questions from Robin: what backs cryptocurrency? How does Bitcoin compare to the US dollar for these criteria? Well, let's take a look at this. US dollar, if we look at these criteria: durability, portability, divisibility, limited supply, uniformity. US dollar is definitely durable. It's made of, we call it paper, but it actually has a fabric that is woven into the paper that allows it to be more durable, to hold up in our pockets and our billfolds. Even, I don't know about you, but I have had money in the pockets of my jeans that have gone through a washer and dryer, and I'm amazed that they're still usable. You dry them out, or the dryer dries them out, and they hold up. So we have to say our US dollar is durable within limits. It certainly is not as durable as a gold coin that's going to last 5,000 years. I don't think a US dollar would last 5,000 years. But for what we're using it for, it is durable. It is uniform, definitely uniform. They're created at the printer and they're stamped out uniformly. Portability, it can be portable until you get to really large sums of money. Now, if you have access to large bills, that can help. But if you're dealing with ones, fives, tens, and 20s, and maybe even 50s, which are more common today, and you have any amount of those, it can be a little bulky. It's going to create a bulge in your pocket if you're trying to carry this, on your person. Or I think we all remember, U.S. government sent pallets of money into Iraq during the war, and some other countries to ease sanctions. And it wasn't so portable. I mean, literally shrink wrapped bundles of US dollars on pallets that had to be moved around through with forklifts. That's not the most portable form of money. Divisibility. This is interesting because the dollar can only be divided by 100. 100 cents. You don't have a half cent or a quarter cent. So you can only divide each US dollar by 100 cents. And one of the things that makes money, that gives it its value, is that it is limited in supply. So if it's limited, then it becomes rarer, and the dollars that exist have value. The more of those dollars you put into the system, it dilutes the value of all the dollars that are already out there. And this is where we run into problems right now, because we are printing. And we say printing, there's a printing of physical dollars that goes in the system, but a lot of it is just done on the computer. They will add another zero to the number of dollars that are out there. And all of a sudden now, the Federal Reserve is doing this. All of a sudden, there are, another $1 trillion that are in existence. Now, this also is something a lot of people may not remember or understand, especially young people who aren't taught about these principles. What made the US dollar work as well as it did for as long as it did, there was an agreement in July of 1944 called the Bretton Woods Agreement. It was during the end of World War II, where the agreement was made that the dollar would be the world reserve currency, and to give that currency value, it would be backed. Every US dollar would be backed by something physical. So in other words, you hold the dollar in your hand, but that dollar is a representation of something that actually exists. And in theory, you could go and trade that dollar in for that physical, in this case, it was an ounce of gold. So the principle in 1944 was that each US dollar would be backed by 1 ounce of gold, and that gold was pegged. It was valued at $35 an ounce. And that is what kept the dollar stable from July of 1944 until 1971. And here's the reason: it makes perfect sense. You could never print more dollars than there were gold ounces to back those dollars. So you could never flood the market and devalue the dollar, because every dollar was already backed by something physical. So it wasn't devalued. 1971, and I remember this when I was a kid, then President Richard Nixon, in August of that year, it was the summer, I was living in the Midwest in Missouri, northern Missouri, a rural community in northern Missouri. And July and August are hot and humid summers. And I was working on farms and ranches during that time. And I remember it was a hot, humid summer. I remember this, seeing this announcement on television, and a lot of people didn't know what it meant. They said, "Oh, what's the big deal?" I didn't know then what I know now, and I still knew it was a big deal. Nixon depegged the US dollar from an ounce of gold. He said, "We are no longer on the gold standard." At that point, there now is nothing backing that dollar except the faith and the trust in the US government. So the world is saying, okay, well, we trust you, US government, that you're going to pay your bills. And if you say you owe us money, you're going to pay that money. And you're going to do it with a dollar. But there's nothing, the dollar no longer represents an ounce of gold. Well, from that moment forward, we became what's called a fiat currency. Fiat is by agreement. It is simply paper with nothing backing it. And this is one of the problems. When people talk about cryptocurrency, they say, well, there's nothing backing crypto like there's something backing the dollar. There's not. And there is something backing the crypto. And I want to talk to you about what that is. So since 1971, we have been a fiat currency. Now I want you to see what has happened here. 1971 is the lower left. By the way, this is from the Federal Reserve. This is their information. This isn't my chart. It's called the FRED. The Federal Reserve banking system is where these charts come from. The M1 money stock. So this is the money that that is out there that's being created. 1971 on the left, and you can see there was a gradual increase in the number of dollars that were out there once they were unpegged from gold. Gradual over until you see 2008, 2010, the gray area. That was the financial crisis when they started what was called quantitative easing. That was the term, quantitative easing 1, quantitative easing 2, quantitative easing 3, where they were pumping money into the system to keep the system afloat. Now, what you see is from 2008 and 2010, look at what happened in 2020, beginning in 2020. This is the pandemic. Look at how much paper was flooded into the system. It is astronomical, and the chart doesn't even show where we are today. This is 2023. This chart actually only goes to 2022. So 2023, we're actually above this mark right here. Now it started to come down a little bit, but not in a meaningful way. All right. So what you're seeing is more money has been created in the last 2 years, from 20 to 22, than was created the whole time from Bretton Woods. And up until the time that we began doing these increases. What does that do? Well, this is what I shared with you earlier. Every dollar that's printed dilutes the dollars that are already out there and decreases the purchasing power. And here you go. Here's the value of the US dollar over time. And this isn't current because this ends in 2019. And since 2019 now, because of the pandemic, the purchasing power is even less of what you're seeing here. So we've lost over 90%, 95, 98% of our purchasing power. That's why it takes more of these dollars to buy those 12 eggs, to buy a dozen eggs, because the dollar is worth less. It's weaker. It takes more to equal the value of the eggs in that carton. So I know it's you say maybe we're splitting hairs here, because either way, you've got to fork out more dollars. Yes, but I want you to understand what's happening here. The eggs are valued as eggs. The gasoline in your tank is valued as gasoline for your automobile or your truck or whatever it is. It's the unit that you're using, the unit of exchange, is weakening so quickly, it takes more of those to equal the value of what it is that you're using. So that's for the US dollar. How does Bitcoin stack up? Well, let's take a look at these 5 criteria. First of all, Bitcoin is digital, and I do a whole video on what Bitcoin is, who created it, why it was created, what it looks like, how the number sequences work. The video is on this channel, so I don't want to be redundant here. This is just a little piece of this. Durability. As long as the internet is up and running, it is durable. So barring some unforeseen circumstance, an EMP, electromagnetic pulse in the world from nuclear detonation, asteroids, comets, all the governments in the world simultaneously choosing to take the internet down offline, I think it's very unlikely. The internet is so distributed right now, be very, very, individual governments certainly can do that temporarily, but it's not a global phenomenon. So the internet is going to be up and running somewhere, probably, barring a global EMP event or a technological Armageddon, something like that. It is uniform because it is a programmable currency. It's digital. Let's take a look at this. It is portable, and this isn't theory. We saw this demonstrated when Ukraine was invaded. People recognized what was happening, and those that were using, and I'm using Bitcoin specifically. Bitcoin is different from all the other cryptocurrencies that are trying to copy and put bells and whistles on what Bitcoin was designed to do: streamline, secure, safe, transparent, and durable. Okay. So I'm making that distinction. So people in Ukraine that were dealing with Bitcoin, they had everything they need on what's called a cold wallet. So they took that cold wallet, it's like a little USB, programmable USB, where they could take their Bitcoin information, they put it in their pocket. You could have $100, you could have $1 billion, and it didn't make any difference. It is very portable. They crossed the border into Poland, plugged it into a computer, went to the bank, and now they could buy a new home, they could start a new business, they could take care of their family. So this is not theory, hands down, Bitcoin is portable, probably more portable than gold coins. Those people trying to carry gold across the border were stopped. A lot of them, it was confiscated. Even in our country today, I'm coming to you from the US, you try to carry a lot of gold out of the US, and I don't know that you will actually be prevented. You are going to go through a lot of hassle. You're going to be stopped. You're going to have paperwork. It's not, it is the freedom of being able to do this. You're going to have to declare things. You're going to have to be taxed on it. There are all kinds of things going on with this, all right? So when we talk about divisibility, remember the dollar is only divisible into 100 cents. Each Bitcoin is made of what are called satoshis, or sats for short. Sat is short for Satoshi. And each Bitcoin can be divided into 1,000,000 sats. And it can be divided in that way because that's the way the program was set up. This is open source code. You can see exactly what the program is. So this ties into the next thing, limited supply. The US dollar can be printed now for infinity. We're now dealing with what is called quantum QE infinity, quantum easing infinity. It means they're just going to print and print and print as much as they need to keep the system going. The consequence is devaluing the value of each dollar, and meanwhile interest rates are rising, making things even more expensive as well. Bitcoin is programmed, it cannot produce over 21 million. 21 million Bitcoin are all that will ever be mined. And as of this, let's see, this is March of 23, a little over 19 million have already been mined. Mining is the term used to create the Bitcoins. I talk about that in the other videos. So 19 million are already out there. Once those 21 million are out there, each one becomes more and more valuable because it is limited in supply. And they can be divided into 1,000,000 Satoshis. So if you go to buy, you don't, okay, say the price, the greatest all-time high for Bitcoin, I think was 65 or 67,000 US dollars. If you wanted to buy Bitcoin and it was at that price, you don't have to buy a full Bitcoin at $67,000. You can buy fractions of Bitcoin because they can be divided into 1,000,000 Bitcoin. You could put $10 in, you could have $10 worth of Bitcoin. You could have $20 worth of Bitcoin. And those $20 may increase over time. They may decrease because it's very volatile right now. But Bitcoin actually fulfills these criteria better than the US dollar does. So it solves the problem. Bitcoin is a technological solution for the problem of money, a technological solution. And it actually makes sense because we're think about it, we digitize everything else. All of our records are digitized, all of our transactions, our photographs are digitized, our paychecks are digitized, our music is digitized. I'm a musician, we're not doing this, everything is digital now. So it makes sense that the money would be in some way. It's all of the thinking around the digitization of the money. Bitcoin is designed to be peer-to-peer transactions, not going through a central authority that can manipulate the value. Can't raise, it can't be inflated the way that our dollar is now being inflated. It can't be, because the inflation is coming from flooding the market with too much money. You can't do that with Bitcoin because it's limited to 21 million. It can't be inflated. You can't raise the interest rates on the borrowing on Bitcoin and things like that. So it actually fulfills these pretty well. So those are the upside. it is transparent. It is, people say, and this is the question, so this is a long way of getting this question, what backs cryptocurrency? There is not an ounce of gold right now backing cryptocurrency. What makes it valuable is it is, number one, you are placing value in an unprecedented, transparent ledger of every transaction that has led up to the moment that you have that Bitcoin. This is the intrinsic value. It is an unprecedented, transparent ledger. Some of the arguments against this that I'm hearing in congressional testimony from people that, number one, either are not informed, or number two, they are informed and they are intentionally misinforming the public. One of those two things is happening. They are saying that Bitcoin could be used by criminals for illegal activity. Nothing could be further from the truth, because they can use it, but because it's transparent, you can trace exactly where it goes to, and it's been done. Illegal activities where people tried to use Bitcoin have been traced. If you want to do something and have it traced, you want to use fiat currency because it is a physical currency. It's untraceable once it's there. So it's just the opposite of what we're being told. So unprecedented transparency, unprecedented scarcity. 21 million, once they're minted, they're minted. Once they're mined, they're mined. And that means everyone that's out there is going to continue to gain in value as the acceptance for Bitcoin is increasing, and it is being accepted by nations as a viable currency. It is being accepted by financial and banking institutions, whether we like those institutions or not, like BlackRock, for example, that owns almost everything. They're putting a huge investment into this. Fidelity is doing this. A lot of banks are putting a lot of tech companies are investing their profits into Bitcoin. The Bitcoin is on their ledger sheet right now. It is volatile day by day. Over time, it is unprecedented in terms of the increase in value. If you compare 10 years of the S&P 500 to 10 years of Bitcoin, Bitcoin outshines that, hands down. There are a lot of controversy around that. Unprecedented security. Bitcoin has never been hacked. It's the only blockchain. It's been up and running, the only network up and running 10 years, uncompromised. And I mentioned this in some of the other programs. To hack the Bitcoin blockchain network, if you take the number of atoms that scientists estimate exist in the universe, it would take that number of attempts to break the code that is used to secure Bitcoin. So that's a lot of attempts right there. Unprecedented store of value, as I said, over 10 years. You compare this, the S&P 500 to the Dow, you can do your homework. There's no comparison. For example, it was 8 cents in 2010, 68,000 11 years later in 2021. Some people call that a pyramid scheme. Some people call it a bubble. It's new. And so it's getting a lot of names, and a lot of people are trying to discredit Bitcoin, and that's why they call it things and say the things that they say. You have to do your own due diligence. You've got to look into this. And I would not put your life savings into any one asset. But I will say Bitcoin was declared by the SEC, Security and Exchange Commission, it is not a security. It is a commodity. It is treated as a tangible asset, and it's taxed as a commodity, not as a security. So a lot of implications there as well. The upside is that it can be accessed anywhere in the world. You can be on the plains of, in Africa, in a tribal situation where people don't have access to centralized banking. And if you've got a smartphone and access to a satellite, you've got your own bank. You can share that money. You can earn it in one city and send it home to your family in another city, peer to peer, without any taxes, without any fees. Right now, a lot of migrants come to America to work. They send the money back home. If they go Western Union, there's a huge fee that goes with that. Then it gets into their own country, and there are huge taxes that go with that, and their family ends up getting a fraction of what was earned. And Bitcoin offers a solution to that. So it is peer-to-peer, people-oriented. Now, there are definitely drawbacks, and I want to be honest about this. There have to be. It's tied to the internet. And I said that. If the internet isn't there, you don't have access to anything. That's why you would never want to put your life savings into any one asset. I think, personally, I think it'd be irresponsible to do that. It is very volatile right now because it's in its early stage. It's only been around a little over 10 years, 13 years maybe. It is what in a process called price discovery. And as we move forward in chronological time, the volatility decreases. And as you have more adoption, as more banking institutions and insurance companies and governments declare that it is a viable currency for their nation, not the only one, but it's one that they will recognize and accept, you're seeing less and less volatility, more and more trust. I don't know that Bitcoin will ever be used as an everyday currency to go to the store, and get a Starbucks coffee or something, or a tea. I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. So my Starbucks tea, I don't know that it would be. I know there are people that would like to see that. I think it's more of a store of value over longer periods of time. And I think the record speaks to that. From 8 cents to $68,000 in 10 years. I don't know of any other investment that would yield anything like that. However, I want to reiterate this: when I convert my fiat US dollars into precious metals or into crypto, I don't think of it as an investment. What I am doing is I am converting my spiritual energy that went into goods, services, or information into a form of energy that I have faith and trust in over time. During this time of volatility, it's not forever, but we live in a very volatile environment, our time of extremes right now. And I think it makes sense to spread out the way that you are storing the energy that you've expended into the world, the way that you're storing your money. So these are downsides, and you have to be honest about this. It is tremendously volatile. You've seen in one day, Bitcoin can drop $2,000 or $3,000 in value or more, and the next day it shoots right back up because there are people that know how to work this system, and it's new. And a lot of people are saying, okay, what about FTX? We all heard about FTX. What about some of these other crypto banks? Isn't that Bitcoin being hacked? Isn't that Bitcoin, whatever? No, those financial institutions are separate from Bitcoin. They're dealing in Bitcoin, and the financial institutions are being hacked. They can be hacked, and it is the greed and the people that have created these financial institutions dealing in crypto have abused the trust of the people that deposited and were working with them. FTX is I think in history will be the textbook example of what that means. The institutions are used as the on-ramp and the off-ramp to purchase the crypto, to purchase the Bitcoin. So the on-ramp is where you buy it, the off-ramp is where you cash it out. In other programs, I also speak about using those institutions for the purchase or the sales. But then you take your Bitcoin, because it's digital, and you offload it into what are called cold storage wallets. So you take your crypto information off of the internet. You take it out of that online bank, take it off your computer, and it's on, they look like there are different kinds. Some of them look like little USB flash drives, except they're little mini computers that are on there. The Ledger, for example. Some of them look like credit cards. Arculus is one that looks like a credit card, and all of your information is on that credit card, and it's not vulnerable to the hacks. It's not vulnerable to an institution going under, because you've only been on that institution long enough to make the transaction. All right, so I just want to say that to be responsible here. So hopefully this will help to, I'm going to go ahead and close this part of our conversation here. I thought we would go on, but in the interest of time, I'm going to close this here. So the initial question that came up from Robin, what backs cryptocurrency? I shared with you the way that we think about money, the way that we think about the US dollar, what's backing that dollar now, what's backing cryptocurrency. And now you have the information to weigh whether or not the parameters that are underlying Bitcoin and the parameters that are underlying the US dollar, which of those do you feel more comfortable placing the trust of your spiritual energy into? And that's really what it comes down to. So I hope this helps to understand a little bit about what's happening here. As always, shoot me some questions in the comment section on this YouTube channel. And I want to thank you for sharing a little bit of your day with me today. I look forward to our next. Thank you so much.